Section 1, Ancient History, Chapter 2, The Coming of the First Men, The Age of Heroes, and the Long Night. First is the coming of the first men. According to most accounts from the Citadel, anywhere between 8,000 to 12,000 years ago, in the southernmost reaches of Westeros, new people crossed a strip of land that bridged the narrow sea and connected the eastern lands with the lands in which the children and the giants lived. It was here that the first men came into Dorne via the Broken Arm, which was not broken yet. As you can see on the map, the Broken Arm of Dorne and where it connected to Essos. The only thing left of this connection is a few little islands called the Stepstones. This is how the first men entered Westeros, and when they came in force. Thousands entered and began to settle the lands, and as decades passed, they pushed further and further north. Unlike the children, the first men farmed the lands and raised up villages. When doing so, they ended up chopping down the weirwood trees of the children, and that made them very angry and led to hundreds of years of war. The children of the forest employed their green seers and called upon beasts of the forest to help fight on their behalf, such as direwolves, snow bears, and cave lions. But the first men proved too powerful, and the children were said to have been driven to a desperate act. Side note, which we now know the desperate act was making the White Walkers, by plunging the dragon glass into their heart. Regardless, the children of the forest fought as fiercely as the first men to defend their lives. After generations of war, the last of the children understood that they could not win. The first men, perhaps tired of war, also wished to end the fighting. The wisest of both races ended up meeting on God's Eye to form a pact. God's Eye is in the Riverlands, and the Riverlands is technically classified as the heart of Westeros. God's Eye is sacred to the children because of its abundance of weirwood trees. During this pact, the children of the forest agreed to giving up all lands of Westeros except for the deep forest and the Isle of God's Eye. The first men promised to no longer cut down the weirwood trees. Also, on the Isle of God's Eye during the pact, all of the weirwoods were carved with faces so that the gods could witness the pact. After this, the Order of the Green Men was created to tend to the weirwoods and protect the Isle. With this pact, the Dawn Age of the world grew to a close, and the Age of Heroes followed. The Age of Heroes lasted for thousands of years, in which kingdoms rose and fell, noble houses were founded and withered away, and great deeds were accomplished. Yet what do we really know about this Age of Heroes? Unlike the children of the forest and the giants, the first men of this Age of Heroes left behind some ruins and ancient castles to corroborate the parts of the legends that are told. What is commonly accepted is that the Age of Heroes began with the pact that extended through thousands of years, in which the first men and the children lived in peace. From the lands of always winter to the shores of the summer sea, the first men ruled their ring forts as petty kings and powerful lords. Some names as Brandon the Builder, or Garth Greenhand, Lan the Clever, and Duran Godsgrief. Some names that will become more significant when we get into the histories of each of the seven kingdoms. But the history of the Age of Heroes has been made ignorant by Westeros and the men that tell these tales. As the first men established their realms following the pact, little troubled them except for their own feuds and wars. Except for the Long Night. The Long Night is told in the histories to be a winter season that lasted a generation, which is about 20 years. In this generation, children were born and grew into adulthood, and in many cases died without ever seeing a spring. During the hardest of winters, it is customary for the oldest and most infirm amongst the northern men to claim that they are going out hunting, knowing full well they will not return, thus leaving little more food for others who are likelier to survive. There are many tales about why the Long Night happened. The most credible of these tales is about the creatures known as the Others. According to the tales, they brought the Long Night from the lands of always winter. The tales go on to say that they rode monstrous ice spiders and dead horses that they resurrected to serve them, just as they resurrected dead men to fight on their behalf. How the long night came to an end, we do not know, but in the north they tell a tale of a last hero who sought out the children for help. Despite the efforts of the White Walkers to keep him from the children, he reached them, and in all tales agree that this was the turning point. Thanks to the children and the first men of the Night's Watch banding together, they were able to fight and win the battle for the dawn. This was the last battle that broke the endless winter and sent the others fleeing to the icy north. Now, 6,000 years later, or 8,000 as the true histories put forward, the wall was made to defend the realms of men and is still manned by the sworn brothers of the Night's Watch, and neither the others nor the children have been seen in many centuries. Thank you for listening to Chapter 2, The Coming of the First Men, The Age of Heroes, and The Long Night. Now let's just talk about the fact that in our present day, most people think that the White Walkers are a myth. Well, Brandon the Builder actually learned how to speak with the children so that he could make the wall and keep us separated from the White Walkers. And we thank him and the men of the Night's Watch for watching the wall for thousands of years to keep us separate and safe, because now they're coming back and we don't know how to defeat them.